Hi everybody, welcome to today's Indycar. My name's Gordon Ross. Today I'm in Bearsden and I'm broadcasting a little bit about why Scotland was so poor for so long and why it's no longer poor and why it's now able to go independent and quite happily support itself. For many years when I was growing up, I would be trying to get businesses off the ground or try to get new research projects going, and everywhere I went I discovered the same problem, and I think you know what it is. Everywhere you go in Scotland when you're trying to do something new or something grand or set up some new scheme or business, there's never any money to invest in it and nobody wants to know. So you end up scrabbling around, basically bootstrapping your projects. You're using second-hand equipment, you're scrounging things, and you're making do with what you've got in the same way that they did during the war. But the question is, why was it like that in the first place, and why is it different now? Well, to find out the answer to that, you need to look back in time quite a long way to the Acts of Union and what the purpose of the Act of Union actually was. Now, the main reason that the Union was ever enacted was mostly because the British state wanted to control Scotland, wanted it to be part of the United Kingdom so that they could control its assets and its people, and to prevent any more uprisings from the Highlanders or anybody else. And so a deal was struck, having the Darien project, which was a bit of a disaster. Many nobles and wealthy and individuals in Scotland lost a lot of their money during that project to set up a colony in Panama, which failed for a number of reasons, but basically it was bullied and starved out of business by other larger nations, including England. But the point was that Scotland itself wasn't necessarily in a bad state. It was a fairly poor country and it worked mostly on agriculture and fishing. However, the country itself wasn't ruined, but a number of its wealthiest individuals were, and they were simply bribed by the British state. They were bribed by the English government to take the shilling, as they say, to take the money and to vote away the rights of Scotland and to unite the crowns and to unite the kingdoms. The people of the country were not consulted in any way. In fact, the vast majority of Scots rioted as soon as they knew what had happened, and the guys who had signed the treaties of union had to go into hiding for fear of their lives. They were going to be lynched by an angry mob. So when you look at the history of the so-called precious Union of Nations, it wasn't really a precious Union of Nations at all. It was simply a takeover of one large neighbour upon a smaller one. It was forced on the people of Scotland. The effect of this has been, since the war, certainly, that Scotland has traditionally been an industrial part of the United Kingdom, and England and the rest of the UK has relied on Scotland to a large extent to provide the engineering expertise, to build the ships, to dig the coal, to make the steel, and basically build everything that went into the construction of the Great British Empire. Now, the problem is that as the empire has died, World War II came to an end, and suddenly Britain didn't have the influence it used to have. It was losing its colonies, they were becoming independent, India was becoming independent, the West Indies were looking for their independence, Australia, New Zealand, they were all breaking away and leaving the UK with very little still to go on. So hanging on to Scotland was obviously something they wanted to do. When oil was discovered, this was a major boom. The British government kept it secret from the Scots for a long, long time, just how much the oil was worth. We weren't to know. And the Macron report of the 1970s was kept a secret from the Scottish people for over 20 years, so that we never found out just how much money was being removed from Scottish territory every year by the Westminster government. In the meantime, Scotland became the poor man of Europe because the Tories effectively then dismantled all of the heavy industries and sold them all to other countries, basically. Even some entire factories were shipped to China. But the whole of Scotland lost its manufacturing infrastructure overnight and became one of the poorest corners of Western Europe, simply because the Tories had sold out all of their jobs. So Scotland became the poor man of Europe because of the Tories and because of its position as being the manufacturing capital of the United Kingdom, the engine room if you like. And so now even right up to the 70s and 80s, Scotland was still the sick man of Europe. It was still poverty-stricken. The age at which you could expect to die in Scotland was somewhere around 55. You might not even make it to pension age in Scotland because your health would be so bad, because you had such a poor diet, you didn't have proper work, you lived in a cold, damp house, you didn't have enough money, you didn't have the right kind of food, you would drink too much alcohol and smoke too much. And all of these things combined made Scotland into the sick man. But it wasn't Scotland that did this to itself. And so the point I'm making today is that Scotland never made itself poor. It's not responsible for the poverty it experienced during those periods. And since then, its industries have recovered dramatically and spectacularly and are now making a profit for the whole of Scotland of over £2 billion a year. And so because of that, there is no way anybody can ever claim now that Scotland is the poor man or the sick man of Europe. Our NHS, for example, is the envy of the whole UK. Our health services are so fast and efficient here that life expectation has climbed dramatically. People get treatment when they need it. They have exploratory surgery when they need it. They get scans when they need them. People aren't left to wait on waiting lists for years on end and then die through lack of attention from the NHS. That just doesn't happen here. And also we have a large number of people employed in new industries now, and new industries which will grow in the future. So we are no longer dependent on anybody, especially not Westminster, and we're no longer dependent either on oil revenues. We never actually were, but we can actually now say, because we can demonstrate it through the GERS figures, that Scotland is making a profit without any oil revenues whatsoever, proving the point that we never really needed the oil in the first place. However, that doesn't alter the fact that the oil money was still stolen and appropriated without our consent. So we're in a situation now where our economy and our industries are about to be wrecked yet again, for the second time, by yet another Tory government with yet another reckless ideological plan that we didn't vote for. Only this time, instead of having to go along with it because we had no other option, we now have the option of opting out. We can go it alone. We can become, again, what we used to be, which was an independent Scottish state trading by ourselves in the world and making a profit from our industries. We no longer need any help from anybody, not that we ever did. But remember also that the British state has been leeching off the Scottish economy for hundreds of years, and it's been using money provided by ourselves and top slicing it to make up for its own deficiencies in places like Wales, in the northeast of England, in places where there's high unemployment, in places on the coast where there's little employment. All of these areas are being supported by money which is being top sliced from Scottish revenues and shared out. Things like Crossrail, the London sewerage system, and High Speed 2 would not be able to be funded if it were not for the contribution of the entire Scottish state. The money that we raise in this country, which is far, far more than we actually need to live on, is taken away before we ever see it. And what's returned to us is essentially a subsistence allowance. It's pocket money. We have a huge chunk of our wealth removed at source before we ever get it. The money that is taken in taxation and revenues goes straight to Whitehall. They decide how much we get back in the block grant based on our 8.4% population of the UK. Not on what that 8.4% actually earned, but on what they think we deserve to have based on the fact that we're going to share their poverty with our people. So we're effectively being made poor because the rest of the UK is poor. And the money that we would have made, that we could have kept for ourselves to make our country better, has been taken away and used to prop up a failed Tory state south of here. And so there's no way now that anybody, no British nationalist, can say and look at the GERS figures and say the GERS figures prove that you couldn't make it on your own, because they don't anymore. The last two GERS figures have proved that Scotland is running in the black. Now it means it is not making a loss, it's making profit every single year. And that's without England giving us any of our oil revenues, because they're hogging them all. Once we are free, and we are independent and we claim back those oil revenues, Scotland's actual income would go up by somewhere between 5 to 10 times what it is at the moment. Because the oil revenues are worth so much and we're being told so little about what has actually been taken away. A lot of it has been hidden and attributed to unknown parts of the North Sea. The bookkeeping alone in Westminster is hiding so much of the money that's been sucked out of the Scottish territorial waters. We're not being told about it, and it's being hidden from us. But as I say, even without oil, we can quite comfortably be independent right now. If you voted yes today, your actual standard of living would start to rise as soon as we became independent. So within about 2 years of voting yes, your standard of living would start to climb, your taxes would go down, and the help that you would receive would increase. Plus the fact that your export industries would start to accelerate, and so they would make more profits. Wages would climb. There would be more jobs. There would be more support jobs in the service industries. Everything would start to blossom and burgeon and flourish, instead of at the moment being contracted and sucked inwards by the enforced poverty given to us by Westminster. Westminster has been making us poor and then telling us to raise taxes to compensate for that, making us even poorer still, and then blaming us for that, or trying to blame the SNP for the poverty that they've inflicted upon the country. And it will stop, but it will only stop next year when you vote yes. Because when you vote yes, you're going to free Scotland from that drain, and all of the revenues which flow south and are top sliced and taken away and you never see again will come here. They'll go into the Scottish Treasury. They will go into a fund for the use of the whole country, for everybody in the country. Just like they have in places like Norway and Sweden. They'll have a fund which is just for the people. It's there to support people, it's there to help when things are difficult, it's there to provide winter fuel allowances, higher pensions, better benefits. It's there to assist people into work, not to force them into work by cutting their benefits. The whole system can be changed, but nothing is going to improve unless you vote yes. There's no way any of these things can happen if you stay with the UK. And not only is it not going to get better, you're going to get poorer, because Brexit's going to make you poorer. And do you think that the millionaires and billionaires who run the British establishment really care whether you lose your job or not? Of course they don't. It doesn't affect them. They're up in their ivory tower with their millions, perfectly secure, most of the wealth tucked away in British tax havens, which incidentally are going to be protected by Britain after it leaves the European Union. If we'd stayed in the European Union, those tax havens would have been shut down by European law. And this is the real reason for Brexit. It's not to make you great again, it's not to give you back your laws or your powers. It's to make them wealthier and to keep them wealthy and to make sure they don't lose their wealth. It's nothing to do with you and me. We need to vote yes. We need to liberate Scotland from the yoke that it's under at the moment. We need to get back everything that's been taken from us, and we need to extricate ourselves from Brexit. I'm not saying what we should do about Europe just now, because that would happen later. We would need to decide that as a people ourselves, and we can have our own vote on that after the facts about Europe are known to people and it's explained, and they can find out what the different approaches to Europe trade might be. For the moment, all I can say to you is that Scotland is no longer anybody's poor man or sick man. We're healthy, we're wealthy, and we're ready to be independent. Bye for now.